I want you to imagine something, just for a second. Imagine you spend your entire life building a really successful business.
Right. Which is incredibly hard to do.
Yeah, exactly. You sacrifice, you sweat, you miss family dinners, you take on just ridiculous amounts of stress. But eventually you build this incredible, profitable empire.
A real legacy.
Right, a legacy. And then the unthinkable happens. You pass away.
Yeah.
But instead of that wealth seamlessly passing down to your children, up to 50% of it is just wiped out within months.
Gone.
Gone. And it's not because of, like, a sudden market crash. Like, it's not because of a bad investment. It is entirely because of unavoidable taxes and fees.
It is a devastating scenario. And frankly, looking through the sources we gathered for this deep dive, it's one that plays out for South African families almost every single day.
Which is wild.
It is. Because people tend to think, their legacy is secure just because the business is profitable today. But death actually triggers this massive financial cascade that most business owners are just completely blind to.
And that is exactly our mission today. We are taking a deep dive into a stack of, quite frankly, eye-opening research on estate planning, specifically tailored for South African business owners and investors.
Yeah, this is crucial stuff.
Our goal here is to explore how you can completely flip this narrative. We're going to look at how shifting your mindset around trusts, actually borrowing a really genius approach from Australia, can protect your wealth, optimize your family's taxes, and, secure your legacy.
The Australian model is fascinating.
It really is. Okay, let's unpack this, because before we can build a defense, we really need to understand the attack.
Exactly. You cannot fortify a position if you don't know where the invaders are actually coming from. And in the South African context, the moment a business owner dies, their estate is immediately targeted by 4 major wealth assassins.
Right. And I have the list right here from the research. The first one is estate duty, which would take up to 25% of the estate's value.
Massive hit right off the bat.
Yeah. Second is capital gains tax, or CGT, with an effective rate of up to 18%. Third, you have executors' fees, which, get this, are up to 3.5% plus VAT. And finally, the immediate settlement of all outstanding debt.
And it's really crucial to look at the daily mechanics of why these specific charges are so destructive to a business owner.
Yeah, because I was looking at the tax code in our sources regarding capital gains tax, and, the math here is terrifying.
It really is.
Because you would normally think, well, I didn't sell the business, so there's no capital gain.
Right. That's the logical assumption.
But the law basically creates a fictional sale. The second you pass away, the South African Revenue Service, SARS, they deem that you sold all your assets at market value on that exact day.
Yep.
So if you started your manufacturing business with, say, 50,000 Rand back in the day,
Right.
and it's now valued at 25 million, you were instantly taxed on that massive gain, even though not a single cent actually changed hands.
It's a phantom transaction, but it comes with very real, very heavy consequences. And it actually gets compounded by those executors' fees you mentioned.
Oh, right, the 3.5%.
Yeah, because that 3.5% fee isn't calculated on what you actually own free and clear. It is calculated on the gross value of your assets.
Wait, let me make sure I'm understanding the math on that. If I own a commercial property worth 30 million Rand, but I still owe the bank 20 million on the bond, the executor's fee is based on the full 30 million.
Correct.
Wow.
Yeah, the executor charges their fee on the gross value of the asset they have to administer, completely regardless of the debt attached to it.
That is wild.
It's a massive drain on your capital. And when you stack that phantom capital gains tax, the estate duty, and those gross executors fees, it all culminates in what the research calls the liquidity trap.
Ah, right, because business owners are notoriously asset rich, but cash poor.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I mean, your wealth is tied up in equipment, it's in inventory, warehouses, goodwill. It's not just sitting in a checking account. But SARS and the executor, they do not take payment in warehouse inventory.
They want cash.
They demand cash.
Which perfectly explains the really tragic case study of Mr. Ndlovu from our research.
Yeah, that one is hard to read.
It is. So for the listeners, Mr. Ndlovu built a highly successful manufacturing business. At the time of his death, his total estate was valued at 62 million Rand.
A huge success story.
Right. But after all the basic exemptions were applied, his estate duty alone came to 13.1 million Rand. The underlying problem, he only had 3 million Rand in liquid cash available.
So the family is basically backed into a corner. The estate still owes over 10 million Rand, and you cannot just pause the administration process to figure things out.
No. SARS needs to be paid.
Exactly.
And what happened to the Enlavu family is just heartbreaking. Because they were so strapped for cash, they were forced to sell a 40% stake in his manufacturing business.
Yeah.
And because the buyers obviously knew the estate was totally desperate for liquidity to pay taxes, the family had to sell that 40% stake at a massive discount.
To a direct competitor, no less.
Yes, to a direct competitor. So now his children own a minority stake in their father's life's work, and a competitor is sitting in their boardroom calling the shots.
It is just the complete destruction of a legacy. And honestly, the tax trap isn't even the most volatile part of the equation here.
Oh, right, the guarantees.
We have to talk about personal guarantees. When you take out a business loan or you sign a commercial lease, the bank almost always requires the founder to sign a personal guarantee.
Right, and from the founder's perspective, I can totally see how you'd view a personal guarantee as, well, a ticking time bomb hidden under the floorboards of your business.
That is exactly what it is.
Because you sign it, because it's just a formality to get the capital you need to grow, right?
Yeah.
But that bomb doesn't diffuse when you die. It only detonates when you're no longer around to handle it.
Precisely. The guarantee does not die with you. It becomes an immediate, actionable liability for your estate.
Even if the business is doing fine.
Even if the business is perfectly healthy and making its monthly payments without fail, the bank has the right to call in the entire loan immediately because their guarantor, which is you, is gone.
Wow.
So suddenly, your family has to find millions of rands overnight on top of the taxes. This raises an important question. Why do smart, incredibly capable business owners leave themselves so exposed?
I think it comes down to culture, honestly. In South Africa, treating estate planning as an afterthought is practically the norm.
Yeah, it's very common.
People think, I'm focusing on growth right now. I'll deal with a trust when I'm ultra wealthy or, maybe when I retire. But the sources point us across the Indian Ocean to Australia, where they treat this entirely differently.
The contrast in the data is just staggering. In Australia, roughly 80% of small and medium businesses operate using some form of trust arrangement.
It's 80%.
80%. It's not a tool reserved for billionaires over there. If you are a plumber in Sydney with, say, 3 employees and a couple of vans, you are highly likely to be operating through a trust. They view trusts as standard, day-one business infrastructure.
So they don't wait until there's massive wealth to protect. They build the protection before the wealth is even generated. Whereas here in South Africa, the habit is to hold massive business risk right alongside personal wealth. We put the commercial leases, the business loans, and the family home all in the founder's personal name.
Which is incredibly dangerous.
But the Australian approach, on the other hand, is built entirely around what our research calls the asset protection fortress.
The architecture of this fortress is conceptually simple but just incredibly powerful. You must separate ownership from risk.
Okay, unpack that.
Sure. The operating company takes on all the daily business risk, the supplier contracts, the employees, the liabilities, but the trust holds the actual wealth and the key assets.
Okay, let's pause on that for a second because I want to push back.
Sure, go for it.
Wait, if I put my life's work, my business shares, my commercial property, into a trust, don't I lose control of it? It sounds like I'm giving away my own money.
That is the exact psychological hurdle that stops founders from executing this.
It feels like giving up control.
But it represents a fundamental misunderstanding of how modern trust structures operate. Yes, for a trust to be legally valid and not just a sham, there must be a separation of control and enjoyment. You cannot just treat the trust bank account like your personal ATM.
Right.
But through mechanisms like a corporate trustee, you can absolutely direct the business without holding the personal liability.
Let's explain that like I'm 5. How does a corporate trustee actually work in daily practice? Who is physically signing the checks?
Okay, let's say the trust owns the shares of your business, but a trust needs a trustee to make decisions. Instead of naming your uncle or a lawyer as the trustee, you set up a proprietary limited company to act as the trustee.
Yeah.
And you, the founder, sit as the sole director of that trustee company.
I see. So you're basically wearing a different hat.
Exactly. You take off your founder hat and you put on your director of the trustee company hat. You are the one sitting at the desk looking at the business financials and deciding where to invest the profits. You sign the checks on behalf of the corporate trustee, but personally, in your own individual name, you own nothing.
So the fortress acts like a financial firebreak.
Yes.
Just like clearing the dry brush around a house so the wildfire can't reach it. The trust creates a legal void between the business's liabilities, the fire, and your family's assets, the house.
That is a perfect way to visualize it.
If the business gets hit with a catastrophic lawsuit, the creditors can't seize your family home because you don't own it. The trust does.
Exactly. You maintain complete control over the direction of the assets, but you carry none of the ownership liability.
And when we apply this Australian mindset to South African law, the tangible benefits go way beyond just playing defense, right? We start seeing incredible flexibility and tax efficiency.
Oh, absolutely.
Let's dig into discretionary family trusts.
This is where a family can ethically and legally optimize their position. In a fixed trust, the beneficiaries get a set percentage no matter what. But in a discretionary trust, the trustee, again, guided by you through that corporate trustee structure, gets to decide how to distribute the profits each year based on what is actually happening in the family's life.
Let me make sure I'm mapping the physical flow of the money right. Let's say it's December 31st, the end of the financial year.
Okay.
The business made a great profit. If you don't have a trust, that money just dumps onto the founder's personal tax return, right? And they are likely sitting in the maximum 45% personal tax bracket.
Correct. You lose almost half of it to income tax immediately.
But with a discretionary trust, you can look at the family unit as a whole. Let's say you have a child in university who earned zero income this year. The trust can sign a resolution to distribute some of that business profit to the child, effectively utilizing their lower tax brackets and tax-free thresholds.
Precisely.
Or if your spouse took a sabbatical and has a lower income, you distribute to them. You basically distribute the wealth to where the tax burden is the lightest.
It's brilliant. And you can take it a step further with the bucket company strategy, which is highly efficient.
Okay, what is that?
Let's say you've utilized everyone's lower tax brackets, but there are still millions of rands in profit left over. Instead of distributing those remaining funds to a human being, the trust can distribute them to a family investment company, the bucket company.
Because the corporate tax rate in South Africa is, what, 27 or 28%, depending on the exact structure?
Exactly.
So instead of taking the hit at the 45% personal rate, you cap your tax exposure at the much lower corporate rate. The money flows into that bucket company, and it essentially acts as a vault where you can reinvest the wealth, buy property, or fund new ventures.
You've got it perfectly. It creates a highly efficient, closed-loop financial ecosystem. But the most profound impact of this South African trust advantage is seen at the end of life. Remember those 4 wealth assassins we started with? The trust effectively neutralizes them entirely.
Here's where it gets really interesting. Our sources provided this stark comparison between 2 hypothetical estates, Mr. Botha and Mr. Venter.
I love this example.
That makes it so clear. So both men died with an estate valued at 40 million rand. Both had identical debt profiles. But Mr. Botha didn't plan. He held his shares, his properties, his investments, everything in his personal name.
And the math on Botha's estate is grim.
Total carnage.
Yeah.
Between the estate duty, the capital gains tax on that fictional sale we talked about earlier, and the gross executor's fees, his estate was hit with 16.5 million rand in charges.
Ouch!
Yeah. His family faced the liquidity trap. They had to fire sale assets at a 5 million rand discount and ended up keeping barely 55% of what he spent his life building.
It's devastating. Now contrast that exact same 40 million rand financial profile with Mr. Venter. 15 years before he died, Venter set up his asset protection fortress. His operating business shares and his commercial properties were not in his name. They were owned by his trust.
Because the trust never dies, those assets never formed part of his personal estate.
Exactly.
There was no fictional sale for capital gains tax on those assets because they didn't change hands. The trust still owned them. His personal estate was actually so small that it fell entirely under the basic 3.5 million rand exemption.
Yep. 0 estate duty.
Negligible capital gains tax. And the executor's fees were tiny because there was hardly anything in his personal name for the executor to administer. His total charges were around 2 million rand.
That is a 26 million rand difference in outcomes.
Yeah.
Simply based on how the assets were structured.
26 million rand. Venter didn't just protect his wealth, he literally saved generations of it. And the operating business didn't even skip a beat, did it?
Not at all. It didn't have to be paused or sold off for estate administration because the trust just kept running.
But, and I know there's a massive but that the research highlights repeatedly here, you cannot just download a free template off the internet, sign it, and expect it to withstand the scrutiny of SARS or aggressive creditors.
Oh, absolutely not. No way.
Right. If the upside is a 26 million rand tax saving, SARS isn't just going to let anyone print a Word document and call it a day. Executing this wrong is apparently a disaster waiting to happen.
It really is. If we connect this to the bigger picture, a trust isn't a static piece of paper you stick in a safe. It is a living, breathing, legal entity. And SARS is highly sophisticated. They are actively looking for what they call sham trusts.
A sham trust being when you set it up on paper, but in reality, you still treat the trust's bank account as your personal piggy bank.
Exactly.
You mix personal and business funds, you make unilateral decisions without holding proper trustee meetings or taking minutes. If SARS sees that, they will pierce the corporate veil.
Without hesitation.
They'll declare the trust invalid, and all those taxes you thought you avoided come rushing back, usually with massive penalties.
Precisely. And it's not just the daily administration, it's how you fund the trust initially.
Yeah, I dug into this Section 7C trap mentioned in the sources,
Yeah.
and it's a perfect example of why you need specialized help.
It's a very common pitfall.
Because you can't just give your trust 10 million rand to buy property. If you loan money to your trust interest-free, SARS steps in. They look at the official interest rate, say it's 8%, and they calculate that you should have charged the trust 800,000 rand in interest that year.
Right.
And then SARS treats that 800,000 rand of missed interest as a taxable donation every single year. It's an absolute minefield.
Which is exactly why building an asset protection fortress is not a DIY weekend project. You need an architect. You wouldn't build a 40-story commercial skyscraper without a structural engineer ensuring the foundation can handle the load. The same logic applies to your life's work.
Which perfectly brings us to a specific resource highlighted in our research that focuses on the positive educational side of setting this up correctly. Lumka Sturman. She is a highly specialized trust consultant whose entire practice is dedicated to helping South African business owners and investors build these exact asset protection fortresses.
And the value of working with a dedicated consultant like Lumka, rather than a generalist, is that deep focus on separating that ownership from risk correctly right from day one.
Yeah.
It's about designing a bespoke structure that actually aligns with your specific family dynamics, your industry risks, and your long-term goals.
Exactly. No copy-paste templates. She guides you through things like a foundation audit and an asset protection blueprint session. She looks at your current personal exposure, figures out the legal asset transfer strategy so you don't accidentally trigger that Section 7C trap while moving things into the trust, and handles the complex compliance with SARS and the master of the High Court.
Which is a huge relief for any founder.
Absolutely. And the part that really stood out to me is that she does an annual fortress checkup.
That annual review is the actual secret to a bulletproof trust. Tax codes evolve, landmark court cases change, legal interpretations, and, your family circumstances change.
Right. Kids grow up, people get married.
Exactly. Your fortress requires ongoing maintenance to ensure it remains legally impenetrable year after year.
For anyone listening who is building a business, generating significant income, or currently has major assets sitting completely exposed in their personal name, you can actually look into her educational resources or book a session directly. Her website is lumkastman.com. That's LUMKASTUURMAN.com. It's an incredibly valuable resource to understand exactly where your vulnerabilities are.
It's a very practical next step because ultimately the cost of a professional consultant to design and maintain your structure is an absolute fraction of the financial carnage caused by getting it wrong.
So what does this all mean? It means you have worked way too hard, missed too many family events, and taken on way too much stress to let taxes and creditors take half of what you built simply because you didn't establish the right legal boundaries.
To summarize it, if you shift your mindset and treat a trust as day one business infrastructure, just like our Australian counterparts, rather than an end-of-life panic button, you win.
You really do.
You shield your personal wealth from daily business risk, you legally optimize your family's tax position today, and you ensure your business survives you completely intact.
It's entirely about taking control. Which actually leaves me with a somewhat provocative thought for you to chew on as we wrap up.
Oh, let's hear it.
We have been programmed our entire lives to want to own everything.
Sure.
We want our name on the property deed, our name on the vehicle registration, our name on the business shares. It's the ultimate status symbol of success.
Yeah, that's the dream, right?
Right. But if the ultimate asset protection strategy, the true secret used by the ultra-wealthy, requires you to legally surrender ownership of your assets to a trust, does that mean the traditional dream of owning it all is actually a trap?
That is a fascinating shift in perspective.
Maybe true generational wealth isn't about owning anything at all. Maybe it is entirely about controlling everything. So the next time you look at the business you're building, ask yourself, If you were to pass away tomorrow, is 50% of your life's work going to vanish to taxes and fees, or is your fortress already built?
Something crucial for every founder to consider.
Thanks for joining us on this deep dive. Go build your fortress.